Is Trump a fascist? I've been making my case for this over the past few weeks. We've been looking at each of 14 characteristics of your fascism that were coined by Umberto Eco, who was a little boy at the time of Mussolini, who was the fascist of Italy in the early 30s. If you haven't seen any of those videos, I encourage you to go back. We went through them one at a time to take a look at what those characteristics of fascism are. And do we have a leader that resembles any or all of those? So today is the final day. We've done all 14, and today's just a wrap up. Thanks for sticking with me if you have been with me on this journey. If not, I'd love to have you go back and take a look at those. Today, we are going to take a look at an article that was written the day after the inauguration by Michele Riva. You can go and find more information about Michele. I will link all of these articles, all of these websites. But we're going to take a look at an article that was written by Michele entitled, Umberto Eco was right all along. I am Italian. I had the absolute privilege that only Italian speakers have to have read Umberto Eco's books in their original language. For those who may not know, Umberto Eco was one of the greatest writers, philosophers, and intellectuals of our time. His works include absolute masterpieces such as The Name of the Rose and Foucault's Pendulum, which are arguably his most well-known books. I suppose even the finest intellectual could not have anticipated the sheer level of pathetic and stupidity displayed by the oligarchs of this millennium, Elon Musk above all. Words have a meaning. Exactly 100 years ago, on January 3rd, 1925, Mussolini delivered a famous speech to the Italian parliament, taking responsibility for the assassination of socialist politician Giacomo Matteotti in 1924. This marked a turning point as Mussolini asserted his authority and began repressing opposition more openly. We were entering into a real dictatorship. Fascism robbed our country of everything. It forced us into a war that claimed over 500,000 lives, drove soldiers to colonize parts of Africa, enacted racial laws, and ultimately inspired Hitler's regime and the horrific events that followed. This is why I do not use the word fascism lightly, as I understand the weight it carries. It is out of respect for those who suffered during that time. Even our current president, Giorgia Meloni, whose political party evolved from a neo-fascist lineage, Alleanza Nazionale, and before that, Movimento Sociale Italiano, cannot be accurately described as a fascist. Karl Marx once wrote, "History repeats itself, first by tragedy and second by farce." Giorgia Meloni, Ignazio La Russa, and all of the people in their party are simply a joke, a farce. Even when La Russa, our current president of the Senate, has a statue of Mussolini at home, he's a ridiculous politician and human being. And don't dare tell me my words are political, because there's no politics involved when it comes to fascism. As Sandro Pertini, former Italian president and partisan, wisely said, all ideas must be respected. Fascism, no. It is not an idea. It is the death of all ideas. This is the hill I'll die on. I understand the weight carried by the word fascism, which is why I can only openly describe myself as an anti-fascist, just as the Padri Costituenti, Constituent Fathers were when they wrote the Italian Constitution after 20 years of fascism. My country is anti-fascist by constitution. So before reading any further, keep that in mind. I only use certain words when I understand the seriousness of what I'm talking about. Historic knowledge has a meaning. This is where we reconnect with Umberto Eco. As a highly respected intellectual, he was frequently invited to conferences to speak on topics such as history, philosophy, and literature. On April 25, 1995, he delivered a speech at Columbia University in New York, which was later published as a small book that I highly recommend to everyone, Eternal Fascism, 14 Ways of Looking at a Black Shirt. The essay begins with the author's personal reflections on fascism, drawing from his own experiences in youth. It then attempts to describe fascism as a general phenomenon, referring to it as eternal fascism or Ur-Fascism. Unlike Nazism, which was explicitly codified in Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, fascism lacked a coherent philosophy, leading to contradictions on various topics, for example, its stance on religion, despite being rooted in the late Hegelian concept of the absolute ethical state. However, fascism emotionally drew upon certain archetypes, which the author outlines in a list of 14 points. 1. The cult of tradition. Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," is the perfect example of a cult of tradition. It encapsulates a belief in returning to a perceived golden age of American greatness.
Soldiers who would survive World War II returned home weary of adventure, with a unified desire to settle down into family life with their sweethearts, igniting a baby boom in the 1950s that recorded roughly 4 million births each and every year.
Idealizing a past that is framed as superior to the present.
We will stand bravely, dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun.
The slogan appeals to traditional values, such as a stronger economy, perceived societal stability, and dominance on the global stage, while glossing over the complexities and flaws of that past, such as issues of inequality, systemic racism, and a lack of social progress.
As the civil rights movement attained greater visibility, it was often met with increased brutality and violence.
2. The rejection of modernism. Trump and Musk's rejection of modernism is evident in various ways, particularly in their stance on multiculturalism, social progress, diversity initiatives, and modern challenges like climate change. Remember the Muslim travel ban?
We will keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country, 100%.
Or labeling Mexican immigrants as drug dealers, criminals, and rapists? And what about pulling the USA out of the Paris Agreement on climate change on his first day of presidency?
I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff.
By rejecting modern values, Trump appeals to those who felt alienated by rapid societal changes, offering a comforting narrative of a return to a better time, as described in point 1, the cult of tradition. 3. The cult of action for action's sake. The cult of action for action's sake glorifies impulsive, uncritical action over thought, deliberation, or scientific planning. It prioritizes doing something, anything, regardless of its effectiveness, often dismissing intellectual and scientific approaches as weak or unnecessary. A clear example of this is Trump's reliance on executive orders over legislative processes, which illustrates a preference for immediate action while bypassing Congress's slower, more deliberative work. Other good examples include his derision of experts and intellectuals and detailed planning, which he often framed as obstacles to action. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he frequently dismissed the advice of health officials and scientists, instead promoting unproven treatments like hydrochloroquine, or even suggesting in off-the-cuff remarks the possibility of bleach injections.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or...
Ideas put forward without any scientific backing. He's also the one who suggested nuking hurricanes to prevent them from reaching the U.S.
Thing one tonight, the president has been known to come up with some, to put it kindly, strange proposals that seem to just pop into his brain out of nowhere, sending his staff scrambling to spin whatever the heck it is he's talking about. The Space Force, for example, and going to Mars before he's out of office, or the big, beautiful, see-through border wall. See-through because drug dealers might throw big bags of drugs over the wall and then hit innocent passersby, of course. Then there was his suggestion we should rake our forest floors better to prevent wildfires because that's how they do it in Finland. And of course, earlier this month, we got wind of the scheme to buy Greenland, despite the fact that the sovereign territory is not up for sale. According to a new report from Axios, President Trump has been very interested in a brilliant plan to stop hurricanes. Drop a nuclear bomb on them.
4. Disagreement is treason. This point reflects an authoritarian mindset where dissent or criticism is equated with disloyalty, betrayal, or outright opposition to the state or leader. In this framework, differing opinions are not tolerated as they are seen as a threat to unity, the leader's authority, or the perceived greatness of the nation. As per Trump's chief of staff, the president expressed support for hanging Mike Pence, his own vice president, on Jan 6, 2021, during the Capitol riot.
They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, "You heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong."
Mike Pence was perceived as a traitor because he refused to overturn the 2020 presidential election results, which he was not legally able to do. Of course, there is a long list of examples. Republicans in name only, media as the enemy of the people, and many more.
Who else has been calling the media the enemy? President Trump.
I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are.
But I think that expressing support for hanging a person is enough. Fear of difference, 5. That's an easy one. The fear of difference is often used as a tool to unify an in-group by demonizing outsiders and fostering solidarity among supporters. It also serves to justify exclusionary policies such as immigration bans, discriminatory laws, or the suppression of dissent by framing them as necessary for security or stability. Additionally, it suppresses opposing viewpoints by portraying diverse perspectives as threats to societal cohesion. Trump's exploitation of this fear is evident in his rhetoric, policies, and political strategy, as he invoked fears of others.
Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
Whether the LGBTQI+ community, immigrants, or anyone who did not conform to the ideals of his base.
We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo.
To mobilize his supporters and exacerbate societal divisions. 6. Appeal to a frustrated middle class. The appeal to a frustrated middle class serves multiple purposes. By positioning the leader as the sole solution, it channels economic and social anxieties into unwavering support.
Inflation is continuing to rage, and interest rates are far too high. And I've been disappointed to see the Biden administration's attempt to block the reforms of the American people and that they voted for.
Frustrations are redirected toward scapegoats, such as immigrants, elites, or minorities.
I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done.
Fostering unity within the in-group while deepening societal divisions. This approach also reinforces authoritarian tendencies as promises of decisive action resonate with those seeking stability and security, even at the expense of democratic principles. Trump's messaging and policies consistently tapped into these frustrations, transforming middle-class discontent into a powerful political weapon while entrenching divisions and consolidating his authority. 7. Obsession with a plot. This is a defining trait of Ur-Fascism. where leaders and movements rely on conspiracy theories to explain societal problems, unify supporters, and delegitimize opponents. This mindset portrays the nation or group as under constant threat from hidden enemies, be they internal or external, fostering paranoia and justifying authoritarian control. Trump's fixation on endless conspiracy theories, from the deep state to election fraud,
And to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people.
and his relentless labeling of even verified information as fake news exemplify a narrative designed to portray himself as a victim of hidden malevolent forces.
And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news, and I don't mind that so much.
This narrative serves to justify extraordinary actions under the guise of combating these supposed threats. 8. Enemies that are at the same time too strong and too weak. This paradoxical view involves portraying enemies as simultaneously omnipotent and vulnerable. They are depicted as existential threats that require aggressive action, yet they're weak enough to be ultimately defeated, reinforcing the leader's power and the group's superiority. Immigrants on the southern border are portrayed as both strong and weak. Strong in threatening jobs, safety, and culture by bringing drugs, crime, and gangs like MS-13.
I couldn't stand it. Watching these people come in from jails and mental institutions and the worst criminals in the street, gang members being dropped off in buses and bussed into our country. I couldn't stand it.
Yet weak as they are depicted as poor, desperate, and dependent on welfare, burdening society rather than contributing to it.
There are some problems that I think that we absolutely should look at. For example, we have a massive fraud problem in Social Security and Medicare because you have illegal aliens who are collecting Social Security and Medicare, sometimes fraudulently.
Make no mistake, immigrants, both documented and undocumented, are good for this country, economically and socially. In this narrative, China is also strong yet very weak. It steals American jobs, manipulates trade, and spreads viruses, but it's also easy to defeat with tariffs, like a paper tiger that would crumble under American pressure. The deep state, the media with their fake news, Antifa, and even the Democratic Party are portrayed as enemies that are paradoxically both too strong and too weak. 9. Pacifism is trafficking with the enemy. The idea that pacifism is trafficking with the enemy frames any opposition to militarism, aggression, or conflict as a betrayal. Pacifism is not merely seen as naive or misguided, but as an active collaboration with enemies, undermining the nation's strength and unity. Trump consistently framed peaceful protest, diplomacy, and calls for reform as signs of weakness that emboldened enemies, positioning himself as the defender of law and order through militarized responses and aggressive policies.
I will fight to protect you. I am your president of law and order.
He equated reluctance to use force or oppose militarization with betrayal, often criticizing opponents and allies alike for perceived disloyalty or softness.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us what is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two.
This narrative elevated strength and force as patriotic ideals, while dismissing pacifism, diplomacy, or calls for systemic change as un-American and dangerous. 10. Contempt for the weak. Trump's rhetoric and policies often glorify strength and dominance while expressing disdain for vulnerability and weakness. From mocking a reporter with a disability,
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
To calling fallen soldiers losers, and describing certain nations as shithole countries.
Washington Post reports that the president became frustrated, and according to several people briefed on the meeting, he asked, quote, "Why are we having all these people from blank hole countries come here?" Trump said, according to these people, referring to African countries and Haiti.
He consistently portrays those perceived as weak or struggling as burdens or failures. Immigrants, particularly from poorer regions, are dehumanized as threats or dependents, reinforcing a narrative that dismisses the value of those who do not fit into a framework of power or self-reliance. This contempt extended into his policy decisions, such as efforts to cut funding for social programs like food stamps and Medicaid, which frames reliance on government support as a failure. His response to crises like Hurricane Maria, where he downplayed the suffering of Puerto Ricans and blamed local leaders, further highlighted his lack of empathy for vulnerable communities. By promoting strength and ridiculing weakness, Trump's approach deepened societal divisions and undermined the importance of compassion, equity, and support for marginalized groups. 11. Everybody is educated to become a hero. The notion that everyone should aspire to heroism defined by loyalty, sacrifice, and alignment with a greater cause is a recurring theme in Trump's rhetoric and actions. He frequently frames his supporters as true patriots, defending American values against perceived enemies like socialists or fake news. This narrative reached a peak during the Jan 6 Capitol riot, where participants, convinced they were acting heroically, sought to overturn what they believed was a stolen election.
Well, thank you very much. And you see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly and very unfairly, and you know that, and everybody knows that.
Trump often employs militaristic and combative language, framing political and social issues as battles requiring heroic intervention. Phrases like "Save America" on Jan 6, 2021, and his praise for police and military personnel reinforce the idea of heroism tied to authority and force. At the same time, he celebrated risk and defiance, portraying actions like downplaying COVID-19 or hosting large rallies during the pandemic as courageous resistance to fear. In contrast, he mocked traits he deemed unheroic, such as John McCain's capture in war or calls for compromise and peaceful protest.
I raised $1 million for him. It's a lot of money. I supported him. He lost. He let us down. But, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that, because I don't like losers. But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
This rhetoric fostered a collective identity rooted in loyalty, strength, and sacrifice, aligning with a vision where heroism is tied to the leader's agenda rather than individual aspirations. 12. Machismo. Machismo glorifies hypermasculinity, aggression, and dominance, portraying these traits as essential for strength and leadership, while dismissing compassion, collaboration, and emotional expression as signs of weakness. His objectification of women, from the Access Hollywood remarks to comments on appearances, further reinforced traditional gender roles, relegating women to subservient positions and valuing them primarily for their looks.
I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it. Whoa. I did try and fuck her. She was married.
That's huge news there.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
Trump's aggressive leadership style aligns with machismo ideals, favoring confrontation over diplomacy and praising strongmen like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un for their decisiveness.
He's a pretty smart cookie.
Those prisons are rough. I don't believe he knew about it.
He just said it's not Russia.
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
Mark Zuckerberg's, the newest Trump best friend, recent comment that companies miss masculine energy echoes this perspective, suggesting that aggression and dominance are superior traits for success, while sidelining empathy and collaboration. And this one makes me laugh a little bit because I just cannot imagine anybody, any man of any kind of economic class, of just any man at all, walking into their office space and say, you know what we need? Less women. You know what we need in this environment? More toxic masculinity. Anyway, sorry, I digress. 13, selective populism. Selective populism thrives on dividing society into the true people who align with the leader's vision and outsiders who are excluded as enemies or illegitimate. Trump frequently invokes this dynamic, framing his supporters as real Americans, embodying hard work, patriotism, and traditional values, while dismissing critics, urban elites, and marginalized groups as un-American. His rhetoric, such as addressing the forgotten men and women, or branding Democratic-run cities as hellholes.
When you see what's going on in some of these Democrat-run cities, all Democrat-run cities, in every case, and they go into hell.
Reinforced a stark divide between rural and urban America, glorifying one while vilifying the other. Trump's selective populism also relied on scapegoating and undermining institutional legitimacy. Immigrants, refugees, and travelers from Muslim-majority countries are framed as threats to the social fabric, while institutions like the media and courts are dismissed as tools of the outgroup.
Yeah, if you go back into the 4 congresswomen, the things they've said about our country are terrible. What they've said about Israel are just terrible. I don't know, I can't say for sure, but certainly a lot of people say they hate our country, and I think it's a disgrace what they've said.
His response to the 2020 election, alleging widespread voter fraud, excluding millions of voters from legitimacy, culminating in the Jan 6 Capitol riot. By portraying his supporters as defenders of democracy and dismissing others as fraudulent or manipulative, Trump used selective populism to deepen societal divisions, foster loyalty among his base, and marginalize dissent, closely mirroring authoritarian strategies. 14. Newspeak. Newspeak, a concept from Orwell's 1984 and reflected in authoritarian regimes, manipulate language to limit critical thinking and enforce ideological conformity. Trump's communication style mirrors this through simplistic, repetitive phrases like fake news and build the wall, which distill complex issues into emotionally charged slogans. These phrases discouraged nuanced debate, fostering trust in his narrative while undermining institutions and dissent. Emotional buzzwords like rigged system and enemy of the people rallied his base by creating a binary divide between supporters and perceived enemies, bypassing rational discussion for loyalty-driven outrage.
It was just too big to rig. It was too big to rig.
Trump's use of derogatory nicknames such as Crooked Hillary or Sleepy Joe
Sleepy Joe
reduced opponents to caricatures, making them easier to vilify. He distorts meanings to align with his agenda, as seen in labeling Capitol rioters as patriots while framing peaceful protesters as threats. He eroded trust in objective truth through contradictions, such as promoting election fraud claims without evidence and aligning public perception with his narrative. This approach exemplifies the tactic of newspeak, controlling discourse and suppressing critical thought to consolidate power and ideological unity. Where are we going? Those who know history, who critically read books or read books and truly understand them, know where we are headed. Just as fascism once leveraged the new media of its time, films, radio, and print, Trump has harnessed the widely accessible media of our era, social networks. Musk's X has always been on his side. Meta has recently aligned, and TikTok praised the president for swiftly removing the ban, ironically, the same ban that Trump had originally championed. There isn't a single mainstream social network that isn't directly or indirectly controlled or held hostage by Trump and his oligarchs. In the best case scenario, he'll further deregulate the market, allowing billionaires to become even richer while the middle class gradually, finally vanishes. For some reason, there's a misconception that billionaires care about others. They don't. They're billionaires precisely because we, the others, are not wealthy. Money is finite. There's only so much to go around, and they own almost all of it, and they want more. I've never feared the return of authoritarian regimes, and perhaps I'm not even afraid that it could happen now, with the new Trump presidency starting with a Roman salute, the one used by fascists and Nazis in the last century. But I can't help but worry about how we will normalize these behaviors, eroding the rules, hard-won social progress, and recognitions that required countless political and social battles to achieve. The eternal fascism serves as a stark warning about how fascist tendencies can resurface and adapt in various forms, even in modern times. A century ago, few could have foreseen the full horrors fascism would unleash, though some sounded the alarm, and they were undoubtedly in the minority. Today, we have the advantage of history, technology, and global connections. Yet these tools are meaningless unless we use them to resist, to speak up, and to defend the rights that countless struggles have secured for us. To all the people and friends in the LGBTQI+ community, immigrants, Southern and Central Americans, and anyone facing countless challenges and discrimination in the years ahead, I stand with you. That is a brilliant piece of work by Michele Riva, who has been living who grew up in Italy, the country which was spending the last 100 years recovering from the fascist regime of the early 30s. So he knows what he's talking about. Now, I have made my argument for why I think that this current regime is a fascist regime. We've been through all 14 of the characteristics. We've looked in depth at what those characteristics mean and how they've been applied in the political world of today. But I do want to give a final note, a final message to Jon Stewart, who was asked about why he is so reluctant to call out Trump for his fascist ideals. Take a listen.
What do you say to your critics who are saying that you're being light on the fascist message recently?
Oh, I tell my critics, shut up. You're a fascist. No. So I do appreciate that because I understand the desire, but like I'm very big on, and I know it's annoying, but specificity and nuance. And I think if you cry fascism at every administrative overreach, even the ones that are constitutionally okay, you will find yourself out of fascism bullets when the time really comes to remind people of, because you will, I think what the media has done over the last 10 years is cry wolf to the point where they numbed everybody. It was an anesthetic. And it got to where, what was the thing they litigated throughout this campaign? He's a fascist, he's a terrible person. Democracy is on the ballot. Guess what lost at the ballot? If you told us democracy is on the ballot, well, democracy got its ass kicked by a majority vote. So I'm very cautious about when to know, like, yeah, hopefully I won't do it the night after Kristallnacht. I'll get it like, but it's like, when do you put your dog down? Like, it's one of those things, like, you're not quite sure. But I do understand how annoying that is.
So today is February the 28th. And going into the recording of this, I was just coming off of a big White House Oval Office temper tantrum. Let's just take a look at what happened just a few hours ago.
I have been to. I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
He's trying to exploit him.
You think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
except
times
that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over there. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It would be a tough deal to make because the attitudes have to change.
Yes, they do.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me.
Okay. Y'all. What part of that was not bully behavior? What part of that was not narcissistic, abusive behavior? What part of that was not fascist behavior? I just have one tiny little final question. So I appreciate what Jon Stewart was trying to say, that we can't continue to cry wolf and call Trump a fascist, because if we use it too often, it loses its meaning. And Jon Stewart made a really good point. It's like when do you put your dog down? Like, you don't want to do it too soon, but you don't want to do it too late. Like, exactly when is the point when you cry wolf and there really truly is a wolf? So this is my question for Jon Stewart today.
Can we panic now?
Can we panic now? Because I think it's time to panic. I think it's time to call a fascist a fascist. If it walks like a fascist and quacks like a fascist. Okay. I am going to go spend some time after this video re-regulating because I am dysregulated right now. But I am snarky positivity, which means I always end on a positive note. And I have a positive note. It is this. Today's February the 28th. Do you know what else was happening on February the 28th in 2025? Let's take a look.
When I say Friday, you say 28th. Friday. 28th. Friday. 28th.
Some Americans are planning a 24-hour spending blackout this Friday, February 28th. Organized by the grassroots group People's Union USA, this nationwide economic blackout aims to boycott major retailers who rolled back their diversity, equity, and inclusion practices in response to President Donald Trump's efforts to end DEI. Participants of the blackout are encouraged to stop making nearly all purchases at major retailers like Amazon, Walmart, and Best Buy. If you must make a purchase, organizers recommend choosing local and small businesses instead. Despite the push to pause consumer activity, major retailers such as Walmart, Target, and Amazon will remain open. Experts say a day of no spending may not hurt big retailers financially, but it could highlight consumer influence.
There is a small act of resistance happening in the country today, February the 28th, where we have been asked not to support big business, big box stores, restaurant chains, fast food chains, mostly to withhold our dollars today, just for one day, And while doing this will not cripple any of those companies, it will send the message that we have not given up and that we do still have some power. And that if we decide to mobilize, we can get a lot done in this country. All of the civil rights that we are losing right now, we once didn't have, and we fought hard for them. If we lose them now, we will get back up on that horse and we will fight to get them back again. So that's my bit of good news for today. We are not done with the fight. There is still a resistance. We're going to be okay. If you like the content, please subscribe and like, and give me a comment, because now that we're done with the Ur-Fascism series, we're going to be looking at some other things politically and economically. I'm just on a learning journey. I'm here to learn. I'm here to teach you what I'm learning as I'm learning it. So let me know what it is that you want to know a little bit more about. And thank you again for being with me for this journey. I'm Snarky Positivity. Okay, bye.